When severe storms strike, keep an eye upstream, because a flash flood could be coming at you. In Australia, rescuers brave a ripping current to keep a young boy from being swept downstream.
He was quite upset. He said a couple of times he thought he was going to die.
Rescue! You got debris coming! It's all moving!
In Colorado, a flash flood rages through city streets.
Help me! We'll get you, just hang on!
Even rescuers are put in peril.
When the motor died, and I thought if we get caught in the fast water, 2 men sitting in a small boat didn't have much of a chance.
And in freezing floodwaters, a pregnant woman and her husband cling to survival after their car is washed downstream.
We knew that if we let go of the tree, we would probably be swept right away.
The sudden, deadly force of raging rivers. Nature at its fiercest. Flood. The word evokes images vast in scale, of a river slowly rising, miles beyond its banks. But another kind of flood is far more deadly. It is the flash flood, which strikes swiftly after heavy rains.
Rescue 65 copy. Sheriff's deputy said they got a report of somebody in the wash somewhere between...
In the Arizona desert, rescuers struggle to reach a couple trapped by a torrent from a cloudburst in the nearby mountains. In southern France, a storm in the Alps has flooded a Rhone River tributary. It rips through the town of Vaison-la-Romaine, dragging a campground full of motorhomes toward destruction.
Flash floods surprise us. They're the most difficult flood to predict, and that's one of the reasons they cause so much damage and are responsible for so many deaths. It's the terror that surprises us when it comes along.
Professor Jeff Mount is an expert on the powerful behavior of fast-moving water.
Gravity is pulling on water all the time. It's accelerating water. It's trying to pull it toward the center of the Earth. When the water is flowing on a watershed or a basin, it is all flowing downhill towards some common point.
Everywhere it rains, runoff flows down over the topography into channels like riverbeds, canyons, and streams. The more narrow and steep the channel, the more lethal the flash flood, like the one in Colorado's Big Thompson Canyon in 1979.
In some areas, there is no indication that a highway ever existed.
Some of the most vivid memories is looking up the road and seeing a family motorhome lift off the road, turn, go down Thompson Canyon.
John Lippert was caught in the disaster that caused frantic evacuations and left 139 dead. He was a rookie fireman then. Now, just days before the 21st anniversary of the tragedy, he's on flash flood watch again.
I never thought I'd see a Big Thompson flood again. I was hoping I never would.
It's summer, 1997, in Colorado's high plains. For 2 days, warm, moist air has been rising over the nearby Rocky Mountains to condense into afternoon showers.
Flash floods happen anywhere where you get really intense rainfall, tremendous convection, where the air rises very rapidly. You get voluminous precipitation over a very short period of time.
Be advised they have heavy water across the road at LeMay and Spring Creek.
The drops were as big as dollar coins. They were just huge. The water was just gushing off roofs, gushing off commercial buildings out of the gutters. Walls of water were coming down streets.
All that runoff flows into Spring Creek, which runs through John's town of Fort Collins. Now, in a phenomenon called training, storm cells hit the town one after another.
The size of the storm is disproportionately large compared to the size of the basin in this case. That is a key ingredient for flash floods. So you might think about it like a water falling on a rooftop. It all is flowing across the rooftop, and it's very innocuous and slow as it moves across the rooftop until it gets in the gutter. All the power of that rainfall as it's falling on the surface is collected and delivered to one spot.
As night falls, the rain comes in waves.
The rain we were in Fort Collins that night, the rain hurt when it hit you. Plus the windshield wipers were on full speed and they couldn't keep up. And I did tell one of the battalion chiefs, so this is going to be as bad as the Big Thompson flood. And nobody would believe me, and I said, yes, it is.
Disaster strikes at a mobile home park on the edge of Spring Creek.
Here in the trailers of 1799 South College.
Okay, calm down.
We arrived at the trailer park. We had 20 people that were either on their trailers, in their trailers, or in trees back there. The trailers were moving. We had people screaming.
We'll get you, just hang on!
Felipe Flores has been swept from his family.
It rose very suddenly. All at once, it came from every direction with incredible force. The water was very strong, very fast. I reached a place where I could hold on, but I didn't have much strength left.
Okay, we're trying to get somebody to you.
Firefighters try to wade out to the stranded man, but the current is too strong.
We had waist-deep water, chest-deep water. We were trying to get to people. The water was running 6 to 8 miles an hour, and there's no way you can swim in it. There's just no way to do it.
What happened to the guy on the tree over here? He's still there. He's sitting right there.
As the first emergency crews try to figure out how to reach the people who are trapped, backup begins to arrive. Firefighters break into a dive shop for life jackets and anything that will float. Rick Slaby is one of the volunteers to try to rescue Felipe.
We really didn't have a whole lot of time to think about whether this is the right thing to do, the wrong thing to do, or anything.
And now Rick and his partner head out into the flood with only a child's boogie board as rescue equipment.
I went after a person that I could hear that was up close to a tree that was just hanging on for dear life.
In the rush to reach victims, rescuers face potentially deadly currents. Spring Creek drops 300 feet in elevation on its way through town. The massive amount of storm runoff, raging through a narrow area, is creating powerful rapids.
There was debris coming towards us. There were motorhomes, camper trailers, wood, all kinds of debris coming down. The water was getting faster, it was getting deeper, it was knocking my feet out from under me. I knew that if I didn't get to something that I was going to end up going down the river.
There was a trailer behind me. It was edging towards me. I was afraid the trailer was about to bump into me and pin me against a tree and crush me.
I managed to grab onto a light pole. I knew that if I lost my grip on that pole that I was down the stream.
Rick is now trapped by the raging current. When we come back, an attempt to rescue this rescuer goes terribly wrong.
Command, we have people trapped in the trailer park. We cannot access.
In the middle of a Colorado city, a mobile home community is being swept downstream by a flash flood.
We have multiple trailers and vehicles floating. It is untenable to get into the trailer park.
It seemed like everywhere you looked, there was people that needed rescue. The entire city showed up for this. You know, it was chaos.
John Lippert and every other emergency person in the city of Fort Collins are desperately trying to reach people like Felipe Flores, who's managed to scale a signpost.
It felt like I wasn't going to make it. I thought I was going to die there of the cold. I knew I'd freeze to death if someone didn't rescue me soon.
The fireman who tried to rescue Felipe also clings to a precarious perch.
I was scared to death. I was just praying and hoping that the water would not come up any higher and take the pole out and carry me down the stream.
Flint, is that boat coming? They're just now putting it in the water. She's getting really frantic.
The trapped man is on a dive team, and it's his own boat that sheriff deputies grab to attempt to rescue. Al Ohms takes the lead.
My thought was get to that pole, and of course my thoughts were also, if we don't get there, if something happens, we're going downstream. And I could hear the power of that water rushing. It was hard for that little motor to push that boat. This body of water was erratic. It was flowing very fast. It was probably more dangerous than we should have tried to tackle.
As the rescuers approach, Rick Slaby prepares to jump to safety.
And I got all the way down the pole and left my foot up on top of the light, and I was just getting ready to jump in the boat when the motor died on the raft.
When the motor died, it was a pretty frightening experience. And I thought if we get caught in the fast water, it would be very dangerous and we'd be swept away, maybe under a bridge. Who knows where we would be. Two men sitting in a small boat didn't have much of a chance.
They went down into what I would call very extreme whitewater rapids type water, and they disappeared into what I would refer to and my team refers to as the black hole. They just disappeared down into it. When I saw the boat disappear into there, I thought that they would never survive because the water was so fierce. I was scared to death.
While trying to find the men in the raft, emergency crews must also deal with fires from a broken gas line.
Airline 1 to dispatch, there's a fire in the trailer court. One of the trailers is on fire at the north end of the trailer court.
But the flood has crested and is growing calm enough for rescuers to reach survivors.
A lot of the people were having to get into the water, and then they were having to pull the people out by the use of ropes that we had secured on the trailers and to secure places where it was dry. You didn't know what you were standing on. You didn't know what was underneath you. You didn't know if there was fence or barbed wire or a car.
Really could flood, the two of us could keep it above water. We got two entrants, we gotta have a boat.
I think a lot of the survivors were they were in shock and they were hypothermic. They didn't know what to think.
She has two kids, at least one of them's there, she's not sure if the other one's there or not.
They wanted immediate rescue, and a lot of times that didn't happen because we were just overwhelmed. Once we got to them, they were very thankful we got to them, but they were in shock. They didn't, all their possessions are gone. They didn't know what to think. They didn't know where to go. They didn't know about their loved ones or animals. They didn't know what was happening to them. So it was a very difficult time, not only for the firefighters and the stress that we had on us, but also the citizens, because their houses are wiped away, and that was very difficult on us to see that.
At last, the flood drops low enough for a rescue team to reach Felipe Flores.
I had been there for 45 minutes. I was so weak with cold. Both people asked me if I was okay to walk out on my own. I told them I couldn't. They said, "Don't worry, we'll help you."
We got hypothermia. Okay, give up to the ambulance and run them up there.
Rick Slaby, the rescuer trapped on the light pole, is also helped to safety. But his ordeal isn't over yet.
They said we had more victims someplace else in town, so we jumped into the vehicle and took our raft and our dive equipment and headed off to assist others.
And to the relief of everyone involved, the raft carrying the two deputies downstream eventually makes it to the safety of shore.
We had kind of a wild ride, the whitewater ride down the river.
Despite the suddenness of the flash flood and the chaos it caused, over 450 people are rescued. Survivors owe their lives to the courageous response of emergency crews. By daylight, the extent of the damage is revealed. The trailer park is demolished. 5 have been swept to their deaths beneath debris, and hundreds are left homeless. Many of Fort Collins' streets are still underwater. On a university campus, over 500,000 books are destroyed. Spring Creek is back in its banks, with only flattened grass to show where it had been. And experts start to analyze what caused the trailer park disaster. It is determined that water had backed up behind a railroad embankment, engineered for flood control. But the sheer force of the focused runoff broke through the embankment. Once the trailers floated into a nearby bridge, the situation became a self-perpetuating disaster.
Some of the greatest destruction in floods occurs at bridges because bridges are a choke point in the river. And also you get debris which collects at bridges, clogs them up, and increases the flooding.
The event is thought to have been so freakish and severe, it is called a 500-year flood. Survivors can only hope that's true.
I've been through 2 floods in 22 years, and I don't want to go through another one.
I've never been in anything like that in my entire life. Don't want to do it again either.
When we come back, a young boy swept into a concrete channel hangs on for his life. Just minutes ago, these 2 teen boys were skateboarding in a dry concrete channel. Now, a policeman who slipped in while trying to help is fighting for his life. Desperate scenes like these can happen in any city when severe rains fall over hard surfaces in a short period of time.
People who get washed away by floods seriously underestimate the power of the water. There's about 1,000 cubic feet per second flowing along the river. If you figure that each cubic foot weighs about 63 pounds, that's about equal to 30 large sport utility vehicles.
And in a concrete channel, the water flows more swiftly. Around the world, many drainage basins are now lined with concrete. On the bottom of the Australian continent, beneath the slopes of the Mount Lofty Mountains, runoff canals thread through the city of Adelaide, carrying rainwater from the hillsides to the coast. It's the winter of 1996, after a brief lull between rainstorms that have drenched the city for 2 days.
What I remember from that day was it was raining, cloudy and stormy.
Chris Butler is unaware of the rising danger as he heads out to play. The fences that surround the drainage canals are no barrier to a determined 9-year-old.
Well, I've been there about twice before. First time I went there, it was dry and sort of up to my ankles.
This time, the water is rising rapidly as Chris chucks rocks in it.
I lost my footing. I slipped in on my bum. And I was thinking if I was going to die, or I was going to make it through, or someone going to help me.
Help is coming because a friend heard Chris's cries. The Adelaide Police Department jumps into action.
Well, I was already prepared to go in the water before I even left the car. I dropped my gun belt, what have you. And when I got to the edge of the creek, I saw the lad actually coming down the stream, so I just had to go in after him.
He dived in before me. And then he caught up to me, and then I asked him if I was going to die, and he said no. And we just kept on going.
I don't know how John entered the water. I'd only heard over the radio that a member had been in the water.
Charlie 60, Roger, I'm very close. I'll respond to that tasking.
Constable John Baldwin knows the drainage system well and races to get ahead of the two in the channel.
Stopped my patrol vehicle on the Pine Avenue Bridge and then jumped the fence and ran or assessed the creek to see if I could see anyone. And then I saw John and Chris coming down the stream. John saw me and made his way slowly towards me as best he could. He then threw the child towards me. I went to grab him, but due to the sheer force of the water, that actually pulled me in with the child.
Only a hydrologist can understand just how desperate this situation is.
The water's going fast enough, it'll knock you flat. Takes your feet right out from under you. If you are unfortunate enough to fall in one of these concrete channels, you have to look out for the places that you might be swept underneath and trapped underneath.
20 minutes into the drama, rescue specialist Dave O'Donovan gets a call.
There was a great deal of urgency about it. The impression that I got from the operator was that something needed to be done very quickly.
As O'Donovan speeds off to the scene, the men in the water have managed to grab an obstacle called a trash rack and have pulled the boy on top of it.
I hit that and braced my feet, and then just as the kid went past, just grabbed him and put him in behind me, and then John came along and hooked on, and we just, struggled up onto the trash rack the best we could to hang on.
The flow of the water, the noise that's made, is quite loud, and we couldn't hear anyone what they were saying to us on the banks. Not a thing, unless they yelled it out very loud.
Agent, solid!
My efforts were basically to get Chris out of the water and onto John's back.
He was quite upset. He said a couple of times he thought he was going to die, and he was cold. And when we were hanging on the rack, he was getting quite panicky there at one stage. He was really, really worried. He was having trouble hanging on.
Rescue expert Dave O'Donovan finally arrives.
As I moved to the edge, I heard one of the officers yell out, "Tell them to hurry up." That instilled in me a greater sense of urgency to actually get in and do something. The one thing that does stick in my mind is how very cold the water was.
He entered the water straight out, probably 20 metres ahead of us, and the natural flow of the water forced him to the trash rack. However, the people holding the line actually pulled him up short of the trash rack. People on the bank thought they were doing the right thing by pulling him, which in actual fact was actually forcing him towards the mouth of the trash rack.
Torrential rains begin to fall again, raising the water level and threatening to sweep the desperate group downstream. Finally, Chris is dragged towards safety. But as he's pulled up the concrete wall, he becomes tangled in the rescuer's rope. The 9-year-old hangs on with fierce determination. Not until he's finally on safe ground does the plucky boy allow himself to feel the cold and the fear.
Chris was quite distressed. He was shaking quite substantially, so he was obviously feeling the effects of the cold water, and he was in a mild state of shock as well.
As medics attend to Chris, his rescuers are brought to shore.
Oh, yeah, what's it in there? Cold, wet, and water.
Constable Potter behaves as though his ordeal in freezing floodwater was all in a day's work.
Kids are off. Yeah, kids are off.
Thank you very much.
No worries, my pleasure.
God bless.
Later at the hospital, Chris's mother thanks the men who risked their lives to save her son. It was a trial by water that none would soon forget.
What people could learn from my experience in this rescue was obviously not to go near streams. End of story.
With the situation of flash flooding, they can very quickly become death traps. Might be nice and sunny where you are, however 10, 15 miles back up the drainage system it might be raining quite heavily.
You have to be in the water to really understand how powerful it is. And it's only a couple of 3 or 4 feet deep, and it's powerful enough to take someone in.
When we come back, a pregnant woman and her husband struggle to survive in freezing floodwaters. A desert is defined by how little it rains, leaving a sun-baked, impervious crust. But when desert rains hit, it often pours. And the hard crust causes the rain to run off into what hydrologists call sheet flows. These fill up dry washes and rise very quickly, threatening everything downstream. Of the world's arid regions, California's San Gabriel Valley is one of the most prone to flood danger. The basin drops almost 11,000 feet over the 50 miles from the mountains to the sea. And it is jam-packed with people. The winter rains that once washed freely overland now rush through concrete channels with incredible speed and force.
One of the unwanted consequences of paving drainage basins is we just simply get the water off the landscape too quickly, causing a rapid rise and rapid flooding. We actually have set ourselves up for a condition which increases flooding, and in fact we can now get flash floods from storms which didn't produce flash floods in that natural landscape.
In the winter of 1998, heavy rains swelled the channels that flow through the city of Chino.
We had quite a bit of rain that day. It was kind of like thunderstorm activity, and there was quite a bit of rain up near our local mountains where most of the water that comes through our channels originate.
It's going to be a major incident. We can use all the help over here we can get. I don't know how we're going to get these people out.
Tim Stewart and the Chino Hills firefighting team begin a long day, scrambling to rescue people caught in flash flood conditions.
We're going to need the Rescue 65 at this location. Yeah, I understand that. Can we do any help on the west side versus the side you're on?
They're off to save a man spotted in a flood control channel. He jumped in to save his dog and has been swept 12 miles downstream.
We'll get you, just hang on!
As onlookers rush to see if the man survives, a rescue attempt is made under the bridge.
Because of the velocity of the water being 20 to 30 miles an hour, it can make you lose your footing, and you can end up a swiftwater victim just in that shallow of water. It's something you have to experience to really get the full feeling of that force of the water on you. It's very hard for us to find an area to actually pull a victim out because they're designed to be smooth. There's nowhere to climb out, nothing to really hook onto.
Firefighters on shore see that the men in the channel are being swept toward a place where it dumps into a natural river. No one comes out of there alive.
That area down there is it's known as a drowning machine. We have hydraulic actions down there that can cause people to be pulled under, and you just keep getting recirculated into this machine, this washing machine, and you never get a breath of air and you end up drowning in there.
The men are 100 yards from the drowning machine when they hit the slower backwash of an eddy.
The only opportunity you have to get out of the water is to try and find an eddy and be able to crawl out. Normally we can find eddies on the back side of those. That's where the water is being broken up and the speed of the water actually decreases.
As the hero struggles to catch his breath, medics attend to the shivering man. Everyone heaves a sigh of relief. But this is just the beginning of the day's flood rescues.
Contact Caltrans when you get some time and tell them they're going to have to get somebody out with barricades on Euclid Avenue. There's about 2 feet of water just north of Pine, so probably a half mile.
And the water that night was probably the largest raindrops I've seen since I've been in this area that evening. I mean, we were experiencing conditions of some of the heaviest downpour I've ever seen, to the point where we had to slow down to 15, 20 miles an hour just to negotiate the streets and the freeways.
We tried to make access on the west side of your incident. The road is closed at this side.
As night falls, the storms continue.
The rain did not let up for, had to be 5-6 hours straight. And I can't remember the last time it rained that hard for such a long time.
Art Reyes and his pregnant wife, Mari, leave a wedding reception that's been forced to end early due to flooding. They're following instructions on what's supposed to be a safe way out.
Little by little, the water started rising, but it wasn't very deep. It was only 2.5 feet maybe, or 2 feet, when I started feeling the drag of the water pulling on the truck.
The couple is drifting downstream. The truck is sinking, and they must escape.
Immediately, I started lowering my window on my side and telling my wife to lower hers.
It was a horrible feeling. I mean, once it was up to our lap, I mean, we were from the waist down underwater.
As the car begins to sink in the current, it passes a large tree. Art cannot swim.
Before I knew it, I was on the branch, reaching back for my wife's hand, and luckily she was there, because that was my biggest fear at that point, was that she wouldn't be right behind me. We knew that if we fell or we let go of the tree, we would probably be swept right away.
Are we going to have any better luck with the engine making access on the west side? We could probably use any unit over there.
Others in the wedding party have called for help, but it takes over half an hour of navigating the floods for Tim Stewart and his unit to reach Art and Mari.
And we do have people clinging to debris here.
And on arrival, we found the Reyes were in the tree screaming. Relatives were there telling us that she was 7 months pregnant. And they'd already at that point had been in the water for over a half hour, so we knew that they were starting to get hypothermic.
We've got 2 people trapped in the brush, and we can't get to them. We cannot get to them.
I think at that time it really kind of sunk in that we had to actually go out there and physically get a hold of these people and get them off that tree.
Ropes and metal clips called carabiners are now the only link between life and death of everyone involved in this rescue. Tim's unit begins a maneuver called a conga line to stabilize the team in the fast-moving current.
I was the second rescuer in line. The water speed that evening was over 20 miles an hour. We actually were probing around to try and feel the ground underneath our feet.
But before they can reach the desperate couple, the team feels the river drop off.
They were still probably 10 to 12 feet away from us, so I knew they weren't going to get any closer, and they were going to have to do what they had to do from that distance.
Pregnant Mari's body temperature is dropping dangerously. Her husband must manage the ropes being thrown to them, put his wife in a life vest, and secure the rescue line to the tree.
You really had to look at your fingers and make sure that what you were trying to do with them is what your fingers were doing.
I couldn't feel my body anymore, and my body was just ready to really just let go. I had to keep looking at my hands to make sure that I had a closed fist.
Now rescuers ask Art and Mari to take a leap of faith.
The biggest concern at that point was convincing her that we had a hold of the tagline and we needed her to get into the water.
With her husband's encouragement, Mari prepares to jump.
I got one foot over the branch, but my right foot was stuck within the branches and I couldn't get it loose. and my husband got it loose, and as soon as it got loose, I fell straight into the water.
She kind of went head first down underwater for maybe 1 or 2 seconds. For me, it seemed like a couple minutes.
Marie is pulled to safety. Exhausted and chilled to the bone, she's put on a stretcher and taken to the hospital. With his wife safe, it's finally Art's turn. He's never been in water over his head.
And took a very deep breath right before I jumped. And luckily, I didn't go underwater as much as my wife did, but I did feel the current, and the current pushed me really hard.
The rescuers bring Art to dry ground. After almost an hour in freezing water, a man's battle to save his family from flash flood is over. The next morning, the flood-bearing rains have finally passed. After Marie and her unborn child receive a clean bill of health, the young couple returns to the scene where they almost lost their lives.
And we went back to where the Suburban was and where we were holding onto the tree. And the branch from the bottom of the creek was probably 10 to 12 feet high.
Well, most people don't have any clue as to how powerful water can be. And the fact that it can take a 4,500-pound vehicle and just push it around like it's a toy. Once you see that happen, you really have a lot more respect for the water.
When we come back, an Army helicopter attempts to rescue a 12-year-old girl trapped in the Texas flood. When Texans want a bit of heaven, they head to the hill country. For the rippling landscape in this mostly flat state, and for cool, crystal clear water which runs through deeply cut rivers. Water flows easily over the region's limestone rock, clay, and shallow sandy soil. And when the region's notoriously severe spring thunderstorms hit, the water can run out of control.
If you live here for any length of time, I would say on the average probably maybe once a year, you're going to see some sort of flooding.
Looks to me like it may be too far.
But veteran firefighter A.C. Bachmeyer has rarely seen a flood like the one that's developing in early May 1993 in San Antonio, the heart of the hill country.
We're going to need the Rescue 65 at this location.
It had been raining that morning, and it was still raining when we came on. And the whole city was pretty much in a flood mode, I guess you could say. All the low water crossings were pretty much maxed out at that time. They were sending companies everywhere.
This is 64, this is Battalion 16 and 15. Can we use a ladder truck to extend it out to get those folks there?
4 inches of rain in 2 hours quickly flood roads. Safety authorities barricade streets that are known to wash out. But it's a losing battle.
People still drive around those, and they still go through the low water crossing. They want to take the shortcut home instead of spend a few more minutes and go around.
Looks like these people opened up the barricade and got themselves stuck. I'm on scene at Pine and El Prado.
Flash flooding in central Texas is exacerbated by an ancient fault line that marks an abrupt rise in the topography. The elevation gives flooded rivers lethal momentum. They literally thunder downhill. The narrow drainage basins of the hill country have some of the swiftest, deadliest flash floods in the nation.
As a firefighter, we have training for swift water rescue.
Norman, you ready down there just in case?
Everybody goes through that in drill school because there's always going to be somebody who's going to go around the barricades and going to get in trouble. And the first person they're going to call is the fire department to come and get them out.
Downstream spotters, okay.
Darren Smith helped start this program after some children drowned in a flood.
Most people do not understand how powerful the water is.
Step! Step!
Water moving at 12 miles an hour is putting approximately 600 to 700 pounds per square inch on your body.
Okay, there you go. Put your victim in the middle, guys.
You have to remember that for every time that the speed of water doubles, the amount of force that's exerted on your body quadruples.
Most of the calls the fire department is getting are for cars swept off the road.
A lot of the newer cars now are lower to the ground. When the water hits the bottom of your car, then it starts pushing it sideways pretty easily.
Water moving at 28 miles an hour, 4 inches deep, will move a standard four-door, your average standard four-door passenger vehicle. It will float it.
When cars are swept off the road, they soon become difficult to reach. Often, firefighters must decide whether to walk out in floodwater or use the ladder off a fire truck. A.C. Bachmeyer's company faces this dilemma when water overtakes a Texas school bus.
Every now and then the bus would shift a little bit. The water was moving pretty fast to move a school bus.
Only the driver is on the bus. The firefighters closest to it try to walk through the current, but it is too strong. This rescuer grabs a telephone pole and hangs on. A ladder rescue is the only alternative. Luckily, it reaches the driver, who escapes to safety. San Antonio streets have become deadly whitewater flows.
The ability of water to sweep you off your feet is dependent on two things, the velocity and the depth. Right here where I'm standing, it's not very deep and the water's very slow. Doesn't look much deeper out there, but it makes a big difference as you walk out into this water, because the velocity, not much higher, but the depth is a lot higher. You can't go very deep before you're knocked flat.
Bachmeyer and his company go back to work as calls about people trapped in flooded vehicles pour in. One intersection, notorious for flooding, is completely out of control.
Like a roaring river coming down the road.
Dean Coley, whose auto shop is flooded, watches cars float by. One contains a mother and her 12-year-old girl.
Knew there was a need to get the people out of the vehicle because it was floating back to where the water was higher.
One of Dean's mechanics has pulled the pair out, but the little girl is hypothermic, and access to the intersection is blocked on all sides. An Army helicopter is called in to attempt the rescue.
That pilot is to be commended. He did an outstanding job considering the rain and everything else. He held that thing right in place. The one operator went down and got her and pulled her up to safety.
People who drive their cars through floods, first of all, seriously underestimate the power of the water. Think about when I'm rowing this boat. When I dip the paddle in or dip the oar in the water and I pull real hard, like that, so think of the resistance to the pull as I do it. And that gives you an idea of the strength of the water, the power of the water as I'm pulling against it. I just pull like that. One of the ways water can move things is its turbulence. This turbulence allows it to lift objects and carry them along, and that's how you can move cars.
Even those experienced with hill country floods can still find their lives in danger. Highway patrolman Joe Gonzalez was trying to reach a rescue site when he followed a construction truck onto this flooded freeway. He had hoped the truck would break the water's flow, but now they're both trapped. With no rescue choppers in sight, a television news crew decides it must act. The pilot approaches carefully, knowing one jolt could knock Gonzalez into the current. The driver of the construction truck is still trapped. The television news chopper makes a second rescue. Gonzalez walks away with a new perspective on floods.
You ever been rescued like this before?
side. I've always been a rescue.
I've always been on the other side.
When the rain finally stops, emergency calls taper off. Almost 2,000 911 calls were made that day. It was San Antonio's third wettest in over a century. Flash flood claimed 3 lives. The city now has a law that those who attempt to drive through flash flood warning areas and get trapped must pay for their own rescue. The idea is catching on in many other regions that suffer from flash floods. Because no amount of planning or rescue training can change the fact that when there's thunder and rain in the hills, the runoff will rush down with lethal force.
Listen to the intensity of the rain. Pay attention to the rivers. When you see water start rising, that's a good environmental clue to get out of the way.
The idea that maybe a foot or two of water could possibly affect a vehicle that big and heavy is beyond most people's comprehension.
If you get a flash flood warning, grab your family and get out. Don't hesitate at all.